Welcome to Office 2013 class video number 39. Hey, if you want to download this workbook, and this workbook is for videos 35 to 39, click on the link below the video or go to our class website. Hey, we got to talk about how to orientate formula inputs to allow mixed cell references. Now, in our last video, we learned about mixed cell references for the first time. But there's some situations where you can use mixed cell references and some when you cannot. Now our example here is like last video. We're creating a net income projection. So we have revenues. We have in our formula table our expenses listed. And for each column, we have to calculate the expenses. Now the question is, if you're setting this up yourself, you're in charge of this budget. Here's your expenses listed vertically in the formula table. Do you set up your assumption table with the expense labels listed horizontally or vertically? If you want to use mixed cell references, you have to have labels in the formula table and labels in the assumption table parallel to each other. Vertical, vertical. If our expenses were listed horizontally, then we would use this table. Horizontal, horizontal, or vertical, vertical. In either one of those cases, you can use mixed cell references. Now, why do we even worry about this? Well, what's the advantage of mixed cell references? If we didn't know how to do mixed cell references, we would have to create 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. That means type out 6 individual formulas. If we know mixed cell references, we simply create one, copy it down, and then over. All right, vertical, vertical. And on the test, I will try and trick you. I will give you both, and you'll have to remember this rule. All right, so here we go. January revenue times the first expense percentage. And now we either use the sledgehammer method or the two question method. I'm going to use the sledgehammer method here, and then in our next example we'll use the two question method. All right, so I'm totally confused. I have no idea what to do. But I do know that this whole column needs January revenue. So watch. I'm going to look at the B6, Control Enter. Copy it down 1, F2. Well, the 6 turned to a 7. So I need to stop that 6 from changing to a 7. So I go back up to this F2, and I have to put a $sign in front of the 6 to stop it from moving. F4, F4 twice. All right, Control Enter. Copy it down 1. I could copy it all the way down, but if it's working in the cell below, it'll work all the way down. Right, so we're going to save space and just go back and forth in these as we do our sledgehammer method. Right, so B6 is working as we copy down. Now, still talking about B6, let's copy this to the side. F2. Did B6 change to C6 like we wanted? Yes, it did. So the blue cell reference is done. Now I come back to the original cell in the top left corner, F2. B17. Right now, it's pointing at cost of goods sold, 25.5%. Control Enter. Copy it down. F2. It's pointing towards other expense, that 4.5%. So the sledgehammer method here says, yeah, it's moving properly. Now, let's copy it. Still need to think about C17. Well, here, look at that. Without even thinking about what changed and what didn't, I can clearly see that the orange cell is in the wrong place. But I do need to decide where that $sign goes. So F2, B17 changed to C17. I need to stop the B from changing to C. So I go back, F2, and I touch somewhere and hit the F4 key 1, 2, 3 times. And there, B locked, but not the 17. Control Enter. I'm going to copy it down 1, F2. Everything's looking good. Copy it over 1. I got my fingers crossed, F2. It's looking good. Now I'm going to delete both of these. Now I'm going to copy this down, click and drag, and then it's a two-step process. If you're using your Angry Rabbit, I'm going to re-grab it and click and drag. Go to the diagonally furthest one away and F2. That is absolutely amazing. Look at that. It got the depreciation 12%. There's the depreciation line. And it got the June revenue. That's amazing. And what do? We saved a lot of time while creating this budget. Now we want to think of something else here. From earlier videos, F2, we learned that if you're multiplying or dividing decimals, and we are here, we have 25.5%, or underneath there is 0.255. If we're multiplying, in this case, decimals, and we're using that formula result in a subsequent formula, we need to use the round function. So I'm going to hit F2 and add the round to this. I'm going to come to the end. Remember, if you see your selection cursor, you don't want to click. It's only when you see your I-beam cursor that you click. We're rounding to the penny here, so comma 2, close parentheses. Control Enter. I'm going to copy it down. I'm not going to double click because I don't want to replace all these other ones. And then click and drag over. Go to the diagonally furthest one away, F2. Still looking good. Now, with that in mind, I want to go back and look in our last video. Cell references 4. Notice here we were calculating with the future value our pension. We were never using these in any subsequent formulas, so I don't care about rounding there. I'm just looking at these formula results. If I go over to CR3, here's another example. Now notice I have this highlighted, all of the expense formulas. So I'm going to do our trick with the active cell. Anything F2 that's in the active cell, I can populate all the highlighted cells with whatever I put in this cell using Control Enter. I'm going to edit the formula. Round. This meets our definition. We're multiplying and dividing decimals. We're using the formula result in subsequent formulas. So I want to make sure that this is rounded to the penny. Money, right? Control. Here, edited formula, repopulate into all the highlighted cells by using Control Enter. Go to the diagonally furthest one away, F2. Absolutely beautiful. Over here we had number 2, CR2, integers, not a problem. CR1, this example here, we actually never did anything with these numbers except for look at them. If we had a total at the bottom, you absolutely would use the round function. All right, we're going to go back to our AT sheets. There we go. We did a net income projection using mixed cell references and round. Now we want to go over to AT1. Here's a different example. We have payroll. The name, we have January sales, commissions, base salary. There's our gross pay. But we need to calculate the FICA deduction, the Medicare deduction, and the federal withholdings. The question is, do we use this assumption table or this one? It's easy. You just look. Our labels, are they orientated horizontally or vertically? They're horizontal, so the assumption table has to be horizontal. So we can create our base formula and then ask our 2 questions about the cell references. Gross pay times the FICA deduction. Now, we ask 2 questions of each cell reference. There's our gross pay. Well, we're going to have to use gross pay for Medicare deduction and for federal withholdings. So that means when we're copying it across the columns, we need to have it locked. So I'm going to hit the F4 key 1, 2, 3 times. When I copy this down from Amy's gross pay to Paul's and then Stevie's, I need it relative. So no $ in front of the number. Now I click my cursor somewhere touching the next cell reference and I ask the 2 questions. When I copy it over to the side from FICA to Medicare deduction and then federal withholdings, do I want this F12 to be locked on 6.2% or do I want it to move? I want it to move. So when I get to the Medicare, I need to be looking there. When I get to federal withholdings, I need to be looking there. So relative moving across the columns. Now when I copy it down from Amy to Paul to Stevie, do I want this to move or do I want it locked? I want it locked. So since I'm copying down across the numbers or the rows, I lock the 12, F4, F4. Only the 12. Control Enter. I can copy it down and I can copy it over. I'm going to go to the diagonally furthest one away and hit F2. That is amazing. It's got gross pay and it's got the federal withholdings. Now, this is a situation. We are definitely multiplying or dividing decimals, and we're using each one of these formula results in a subsequent calculation or formula, so we have to use the round. F2, round, comma, 2 to the penny. Control Enter. Click and drag down, let go, re-grab it, and over. Click in the last diagonally furthest cell away, F2. That is amazing. Now, here's something else amazing about mixed cell references and the fact that we have our labels in the table and our labels down in the assumption table, not only horizontal, but they're directly lined up. If your boss comes in and says, hey, we have a new deduction, take the next 2 hours off and build a new template for our employee take-home pay. You kind of look over your shoulder at your boss and you say, oh, you mean like this? And you simply right-click the H, point to Insert. This will insert a whole new column. You come down here and you say, oh, hey, boss, what was the deduction you wanted? It's going to be pension. Enter. What's the rate? Oh, we're going to start at 2. So you type a 2. You notice that it's pre-formatted. Enter. And then you come up here and you highlight the entire column. There's a sum. Not only that, but look, our label at the top. We didn't even retype these labels. We were smart. We had a formula looking at them. And then our lovely little mixed cell reference formula that's looking at gross pay and the proper percentage. I can simply highlight this entire column and point to the fill handle and click and drag. And just like that, you're kidding me, gross pay and our new inserted pension percent. Absolutely working perfect. You can click in each one of these. We even were smart. We didn't do plus, plus, plus. We did the sum function. So when we inserted that column, it updated perfectly. So assumption tables, the orientation of our formula inputs, very important. In fact, mandatory that they're parallel to the labels in the table if you want to do mixed cell references. All right, we'll see you next video.